Welcome everybody to the final session before the raffle of CALIcon2020. I am so delighted to have Kat Moon here from Vanderbilt Law School. I'll let her introduce herself if she wants to go through all her many titles. And I just felt like you might be the perfect person to end this for us. I'm looking forward to hearing what you have to say, and even if you just blither for a half hour, I'm happy to watch you do that, because this is been a long conference and we've learned so much. So go for it.
Thank you for inviting me, John. I'm thrilled to be here. I'm going to suggest we take like just 30 seconds to all just sit, and we're going to have just a moment of mindful breathing before I start blathering. So just sit back, straight back, and then relax your shoulders. Place your feet flat on the ground. Feel your connection to the ground. Just take a deep breath in and hold it there for a moment. I like to close my eyes. You do not have to. And simply breathe, exhale and breathe normally, focusing on your breath, just breathing in and out, focusing on your breath. Take a last breath and open your eyes. And we are all calm and relaxed and mindful and ready to listen to me explain why it's time to burn it down. All right? Okay. John's muted. Okay, everybody's muted but me. All right, I'm going to share my screen and get going, okay? So, here we go. Let me make sure my clicker's working. All right, so the title of my talk is The Crisis We Needed, and I'm going to offer some final thoughts for this virtual conference. I've been able to watch a few and listen to a few of the sessions. I might then have a CALI to action for you. So I will briefly introduce myself. I'm Kat Moon. I am a licensed attorney. I practiced law for 20 years before I started teaching at Vanderbilt. I am in year 4 now. I'm a lecturer in law. I teach any combination of up to 5 or 6 classes in a given year. And I'm also the director of innovation design, which means I design the curriculum for our program on law and innovation at Vanderbilt, or PoLI. So that's me in a nutshell. I bring all of that to what I'm about to share with you. And my primary focus for my research is on innovation in the legal profession across the spectrum. So I am loving this moment, and so it's the crisis we needed. First, I want to issue a caveat. I understand fully that I am preaching to the choir here. I know that y'all know so much of what I'm about to share, but I have a very specific purpose and a very definite call to action. So here we go. All right, I want to start out by acknowledging where I got the title for my talk. This may not have been the crisis we wanted, but it's the crisis we needed. These are the words of Chief Justice Bridget McCormick. She is with the Michigan Supreme Court, and I highly recommend you follow her on Twitter. I've included her handle there. I had the honor of being in a webinar with her earlier this week, hosted by the Berkeley Judicial Institute. And the purpose was to talk about what courts are doing right now during the pandemic. And Chief Justice McCormick really just shared some zingers. So you're going to hear from her throughout this talk. But she clearly made the case for why this is the crisis we needed across the legal spectrum. And I think her points apply equally to legal education. Another quote from Chief Justice McCormick: pre-COVID, we were ignoring all the ways that weren't working. We have problem blindness. The status quo, it is like water to the fish. We are blind to what isn't working. And I'm sure you all have heard the story about the fish swimming through the water and another fish pointing out that really the fish can't even see the water they're swimming in, right? It's all they know. They can't see it. It's like the air we breathe. So I'm going to do 3 things with you this afternoon as quickly as possible because I also want to get to questions. So the first thing I'm going to do is talk about the challenges we face. We face some serious challenges. I feel pretty confident most of us are fully aware of what they are, but I'm just going to remind you briefly. We also have incredible opportunities. We can climb on the rocket ship and go if we choose. How do we do that? What is our kapow moment? What are the actions we take? I have some suggestions. So, what are the challenges? First of all, I propose we have a design problem. It actually isn't my proposal. You may or may not know that the ABA's Commission on the Future of Legal Education, which was appointed back in 2018, issued its findings earlier this year, right as the pandemic happened. So I think most people didn't even see it coming or know it happened. The document's called The Principles for Legal Education and Licensure in the 21st Century. They link the two as critical for lawyer formation, I think in a very appropriate and holistic way. And don't worry, I'm going to provide links to everything that I talk about. So if you haven't read the report, I think it's like 10 pages. I highly recommend you do. This is the cover of the report. And I want to acknowledge that the report does a great job of creating, from a foundational standpoint, the fact that we are operating in a system, a legal system, multiple legal systems, as well as a system of legal education that is the product of the Second Industrial Revolution. So what is the Second Industrial Revolution? Well, it was a time of linear, mechanistic, and top-down manners of dealing with each other. It was the industrial age, and this is the time in which our systems were designed, and this is the time our systems were designed to deal with. Now let's consider where we are today. We're in the 4th Industrial Revolution. It is a time marked by great velocity and rapid pace of change, technologically specifically, an incredible scope in the vast nature and reach of that change, and amazing interconnectedness, both on the micro and the macro level. We have become a global society in which change happens very, very quickly on a very large scale. This is the 4th Industrial Revolution, and it's kind of opposite to the 2nd Industrial Revolution. Again, the systems in which and the time in which our systems were designed to serve. So I do not believe that robots are going to take over the lawyer's job, even though we are in the 4th Industrial Revolution with all its velocity and interconnectedness. But I think this is important to understand. Those who want to stay relevant in the professions, including the law, will need to focus on skills and capabilities that AI has trouble replicating: understanding, motivating, interacting with human beings. This is the world in which we find ourselves. Our human characteristics becoming more and more relevant to the knowledge work that lawyers do. Another quote from the ABA Commissions on the Future of Legal Education's Principles document: we do not consistently teach law students to learn how to learn for a long career in a rapidly transforming world. Again, acknowledging that we are in the 4th Industrial Revolution. So the ABA Commission identifies 8 challenges that I just want to highlight very quickly because I think that they really form the foundation for how we choose to act from going forward. So we currently have a one-size-fits-all education model in a world which clearly is not well suited to one-size-fits-all. We have an outdated bar exam. We'll leave that conversation for another day. We have counterproductive education standards, and I highly commend reading the report to understand their point on this. We have an exclusive use of a general license model, again, problematic for lawyer formation. We have a misguided approach across our profession to disruption. We have entrenched service delivery models. We have a deep-rooted adherence to the status quo. More on that in a moment. And we have a general fear of technology. So I suggest that these 5 challenges are most directly related to the design problems that we face in legal education and really should inform how we choose to go forth and make change happen, to innovate. So I must, of course, reference the Delta model, and it is very relevant here because the ABA's Commission on the Future of Legal Education really demands that we pay attention to all the skills that legal professionals need in order to succeed and thrive and serve our stakeholders in the 21st century. So I'm on the working group for the Delta model. It is an agile competency model for the legal profession, and it has the 3 sides you see. The practice, this is what we think of when we think of legal skills, thinking like a lawyer. We also acknowledge that there are process skills and people skills that are incredibly relevant to a holistic approach for lawyer formation. Well, without going too deep into the model, I will provide links to resources if you're interested. I do want to point out a couple of things. First, how much of the Delta does the ABA require? If you look at ABA regulations, I don't know, we'll get to that. How much of the Delta does your law school curriculum teach and value? And I will say that we identified competencies and skills to compose the 3 sides of the Delta based on decades of research into what makes effective lawyering. We also conducted original research, and it is an agile model, so we are also relying on current research on what knowledge workers, knowledge professionals, what skills they need to have in order to thrive in the 4th Industrial Revolution. And the law, the legal profession, falls within that category. We need to be paying attention to what new skills we might need going forward. So if I try to answer those 3 questions, I think that 2 sides of the Delta almost disappear. I'm not suggesting, and in fact, I'm pretty certain that all of us in this virtual webinar together do things on the other 2 sides in our pedagogy. But if you look across your curriculum, if you look across your faculty, if you definitely look at what the ABA focuses on and therefore values, it's very heavy on the practice. So here's where we are. This is a big part of the problem. It's not our responsibility to teach those things, if they can even be taught. All right, this is a tenured professor at a T14 law school, who shall not be named, who responded in this way to IL's Foundations for Practice report. She was responding to something very specific, and it referred definitely to the relevance of skills and competencies on the people and process side of the Delta. So we have faculty who are fish in the water of status quo. We have leaders who are fish in the water of status quo. They do not see these things as challenges around them because it is the water in which they swim. Remember Chief Justice McCormick's point, we are problem blind. We swim in the water. We don't realize that it's a problem. Well, let me just point out why it's a problem. This is a quote from Foundations for the Practice, The Whole Lawyer and the Character Quotient that ILS produced in 2018. So the lawyers we surveyed, numbering more than 24,000, were clear that the characteristics, integrity, trustworthiness, conscientiousness, common sense, as well as professional competencies, listening, speaking and writing, arriving on time, were far more important in brand new lawyers than legal skills. All right. Let's look at another quote from the report. Almost 34% of law grads in 2017 didn't land full-time jobs. And only 23% of practicing lawyers of the more than 24,000 that ILS surveyed believe new graduates have the right skills to enter the profession. So not enough of our students are getting jobs, and the people they're going to work with and for don't think they have the skills they need. This is our stakeholders telling us that we are not focusing on all the things we need to be focusing on. We don't see the cloudiness of the water around us. This is the fishbowl in which we're swimming. It's cloudy. So I submit, and I'm not alone in this, but you can quote me on it, it is our responsibility to teach these things. And these things can be taught. Again, you're welcome to quote me. I teach these things very intentionally. I think many of you teach these things very intentionally. Again, I'm preaching to the choir, but there are a lot of fish swimming in our bowl that believe otherwise. So I also want to point out that another source for identifying very clearly the challenges we face, Law School Transparency just issued a new report in March of this year. Again, you might have missed it. It's happening during the pandemic. Their 2025 vision is a call to action. I really think this quote sums it up well to identify some additional challenges. When we collectively fail to address serious problems with law school access, affordability, and innovation, our profession loses out on people who could positively impact clients and diversify our profession. These are real and serious challenges we face because we are not a profession that accurately reflects or represents the communities in the society that we serve. All right, okay, I'm done with the bad news. I'm moving on now to opportunities because as a human-centered designer, it is part of my job to flip challenges and approach them as opportunities. So what are our opportunities? Well, I want to refer again a couple more times to the ABA Commission report. They make the point very strongly that we have an obligation to drive change, that we are a self-regulated profession that has the unique privilege. We're the only people who get to do what we do. We have an obligation to make sure that we are changing along with the times and the society which we serve. And we have an incentive to embrace change. That incentive, if we don't change along with the times, if we don't move forward from the second industrial revolution that ended more than 100 years ago and join the rest of the world in the fourth industrial revolution, we're going to lose this privilege. We're going to lose the right to do so. So let's talk about the emergency opportunities that we've had in this moment. So right now we are living through a change in response to an emergency. The pandemic crisis has forced us really to address change completely with disregard to all of these challenges that already existed, all of these problems that we faced. We've had no choice but to step up and do things differently in order just to keep the doors, the figurative virtual doors of our law schools open. So that's awesome. And this whole conference has been all about how do we learn from this change? How do we share what worked, what didn't work? And so this is great. It's momentum. We've had this opportunity. This was the crisis we needed to really pull out the stops and get things moving. Our real challenge right now is how do we take these learnings and keep the momentum going forward and use it perhaps to even influence people. It's an opportunity right now to influence people who may not have jumped on board with the changes or may be reluctant to continue with the changes. And I just want to recommend this book. There are a whole lot of tools out there for change management, but this is a great one, relevant for this moment, Focus by Heidi Grant. I recommend you get it and you read it and you put these tools into action. It will help you keep momentum of change. All right, because why does this matter? Our opportunity is that we are about to go back to our comfortable fish bowls of status quo. Our colleagues are about to be back in the water. And how do we illuminate and help them see how cloudy the water in which we swim has become? How do we help people not be blind to the serious structural problems that are holding us back from evolving into the fourth industrial revolution and serving our stakeholders as we can and should be doing? So I'm flipping it. We don't have a design challenge. We have an incredible design opportunity. I want to refer very quickly. I'm not going to read this to you, but I wanted you to make you aware that the Commission's principles offer some foundational principles and some operational principles. I'm going to share those in just a moment. But this clearly explicates how we build upon a common why to then decide how can we act, how can we take advantage of this opportunity to redesign legal education and how we deliver legal education to our students, to our stakeholders. So a couple of final points on the opportunity, because I think this is so relevant for this moment. High quality legal education can be delivered online. The move to online education will spark innovation. I believe this to be so. The ability for law students to earn their G primarily through online study will increase access to justice. I agree with these three statements, and they were made by Professor Cohn. She has a forthcoming article leading off a symposium issue regarding an online learning in legal education and the future of legal education symposium that happened last March in 2019. So I suggest, I will include a link to this article. The entire issue looks like it's going to be phenomenal, a great resource. And how prescient was this? But we're living through moments that are going to provide data to support these, I think, truths at this point. I also want to call out, I saw him in an earlier session, David Thompson. I don't think his law review version has been released yet, but you can check out his working paper. I found this incredibly helpful with great suggestions on how we are going to use online learning really to reshape the future of legal education. It is all about embracing the opportunity that we are presented with in this moment, I believe. So finally, what are the actions? All right, what is the kapow? We know we have these challenges. We're going to flip them to opportunities. What do we do with that? What do we do about that? All right, so a lot of words. It's the table of operational principles that the ABA's Commission on the Future of Legal Education shared. And I really think it's a good list. It's a tight list. It drives home some really, really important points and principles that I think can clearly support very specific actions that can help us move forward in a very meaningful redesign to join the fourth industrial revolution. A value focus, acknowledging that one size of legal education does not serve all. A problem-solving focus. I actually happen to teach a course called Legal Problem Solving. That one is near and dear to my heart. 21st century competencies. I mean, it's a little mind-blowing that that has to even be noted in a report coming out in 2020. We're a third practically through this century, a quarter. Leveraging technology, opposite of fear of technology. Valid measures, gathering data, using it to run experiments and make things better. Mobility and, of course, well-being. I think it so rightly has a place on this list. So, okay. So putting all this in the hopper, near and dear to my heart are the principles, tools, and methods of human-centered design. And I believe we can rely on these things to help solve legal education's design problem. I'm going to touch on a few of my favorite and make some specific suggestions for you. So we should do the work of innovation supported by the mindsets of human-centered design, empathy, experimentation, intellectual curiosity, unrelenting intellectual curiosity, and radical collaboration. These are my 4 top recommendations to all of us. And again, I know I'm preaching to the choir. I've heard so many of you speak over the past few days about all of these things. You're experimenting, you're expressing, you're using empathy, you're collaborating radically with your colleagues and your students. You are doing these things. But I know, and I think we all know and recognize that we have to be very intentional to do these things. It takes work, even though they seem obvious. And I think it's even more important now as we emerge from the pandemic crisis. We've been through all this change. How do we keep that momentum? How do we channel it so that we can bring our colleagues who might not be used to operating this way along with us? I think that's our real challenge. So empathy. Empathy is about standing in the shoes of another, taking their perspective and seeing the world from their perspective. It is critical when we're designing how we deliver our pedagogy to put our students at the center of that, to understand how are they experiencing what we are doing. I know all of you all know that. I see you do it. So our real challenge right now is how do we help our colleagues who maybe don't engage this way see us do it? How do we model that behavior for them? How do we encourage them to also act this way, to redesign their pedagogy with students at the center. I will also say a really important element of empathy is first having strong self-awareness. Again, I think that those of you who are joining us today know this and understand this and are self-aware folks. Self-awareness is hard. Humans are not good at self-awareness. It takes effort. I want to point out another resource, Insight by Tasha Eurich, highly recommend. She explains based on research why humans really are not good at self-awareness. We're not good at acting on feedback. We're not good at understanding how other people see us, and gives tools on how to be better ourselves. More importantly, I think she also gives us tools that we can help give to our students to help them develop critical self-awareness that will serve them well throughout their professional career. Okay, second mindset, experimentation. We've all been radically experimenting over the past few months. Granted, we have been doing things whether we know they're going to work or not. And I think it's been incredibly freeing for most of us to have really, kind of a get out of jail card to try things. And, I heard students talk beautifully about how they love it when they see their professors try things, even if it doesn't work. And that just made my heart sing. Well, we can't let go of this mindset. I think that those of us who understand how important experimentation is to innovation and to doing better, and not only radical innovation, but just simply continuous improvement, I think we have an obligation to continue to be very intentional and dedicated and model this behavior for those our colleagues who just might not really be on board with keeping up, this experimental mindset. Again, I'm going to quote Chief Justice McCormick. She shared in our webinar earlier in the week, she said, "I love mistakes." And then she went on to talk about mistakes that they've made on the Michigan Supreme Court, just trying to figure out how to give all the courts in the state of Michigan guidance on how to make it through this time. And what an incredible role model. But I think we all need to walk around saying, "I love mistakes," and explaining why this mindset is so important for experimentation. All right, next mindset. I have a lot of favorites. This might be my biggest favorite. Intellectual curiosity, really an unrelenting dedication to always wanting to know more about the things that matter in your life, in your personal life, in your professional life. There is research to establish that a high CQ, curiosity quotient, is actually more predictive of success and thriving in a professional role than IQ. And curiosity can definitely be taught and cultivated and modeled. So I think this is fantastic news for those of us who embrace a growth mindset. Exhibit a high curiosity and quotient. Model this behavior for your students. Weave it into your pedagogy. This is all possible. And be unrelenting in exposing your colleagues to it. And finally, radical collaboration. And I think this can be the hardest sometimes because we exist in a profession that is very siloed. I can tell you, I've been teaching for 4 years and I still get surprised by how siloed my university is, and definitely how siloed law school to law school to law school. We're not good at this radical collaboration thing. We're just not. I know there are bright spots. I'm probably explaining this to some of you who are really good at it. And for those of you who are, please go forth and be loud in your radical collaboration. Demand that other people see you doing it. Teach them how to do it effectively, because here's the thing, collaboration most certainly can be taught. There are good ways to work with other humans. There are ways to work together safely and productively and effectively. And there's a lot of research to support how we teach our students to collaborate. And I think that this is just absolutely foundationally critical to redesigning legal education. All right. So I wrote down so many good quotes that I listened to different presenters share over the past few days. I'm just going to pop a few up here very quickly as little nuggets of wisdom. On day one, Kathleen Jarvel, we can use this time to make improvements. And this speaks to my point, let's not take our feet off the gas. Let's keep up the momentum. How can we leverage what we've been doing and keep going forward and make sure that our fish colleagues don't just jump right back in their comfy water of status quo. Another, Tessa Dysart, she was talking about using Zoom for moot court. This is the future of oral arguments. I can tell you this. I'm willing to bet the contents of my Happy Fun Time swag box and more that all of our students who go into litigation are going to be appearing on a regular basis before courts in a virtual platform. It is an epidemic of judges realizing how well this works, and they're not going to go back. This is the future. This is the future of motions. This is the future of all kinds of things. Yes. Oh, I love this. One of the students said this today, Jenna Foster, and this was her advice to professors. Don't be afraid to try new and creative things. Our students want to see us do this. Again, I know I'm preaching to the choir, but how can we amplify this message and share it with our colleagues who maybe don't know or understand this? And then I'm sorry, I was listening while I was driving on the first day, and one of the presenters in the Q&A after the presentation made this point that I just cheered when I heard, and the question was, how do we manage asking students and expecting them to jump into and use all these different technology platforms that we're engaging in our pedagogy? And I guess it's definitely gotten more intense. The number's gotten larger since we went to virtual classrooms. But I can tell you that I have my students, every single one of my students uses 2 or 3 platforms in addition to whatever the law school requires in every single one of my courses. And it's for exactly the reason that this teacher, this professor identified. Our students are about to enter a profession that is at the center of the 4th Industrial Revolution. And their practice and the work they do for clients is only going to require a larger and greater and ever-changing number of technology platforms for them to engage with clients, engage in their work, and do their work successfully. It is a gift to them if we teach them that they should be curious about technology and that they should want to learn new technology. The opposite of fearing it, but to have just a commitment to loving learning about new technology. We can instill that in them. We can teach it to them. So I just cheered when someone else made that point. All right, I have a dark cloud. I couldn't help but record this one. So a Richmond law professor, whose name I did not record, said during a video that folks shared, I can't remember if it was yesterday or the day before, I decided not to use Zoom because I don't think online learning is as effective. All right, well, guess what? We're all online right now, so not optional, but let's not even argue about that. 2014, this article points out the research is very clear. Students in online learning courses performed better than those receiving exclusively face-to-face instruction. Granted, this is not legal education. This in other areas in which online learning has been happening a lot longer, still incredibly relevant, and there is research forthcoming on the impact in legal education. Let's go further. Let's think about if we're not online all the time, blended learning is going to be at the core of what we do. Studies revealed 35% stronger learning outcomes for students taught in a blended format. Friends, it is just not true that online learning isn't as effective. That's a statement of fear and frankly, ignorance. All right, I'm about to be done because now I'm pointing at you. I wanna know, what is your kapow? What is one thing that you learned at CALIcon2020 that you can commit to doing? And I want you to put it in the chat. I made a huge list of things I've learned and I'm ready to go. I would love to know the meaningful takeaways that you all gathered from all that you've heard over the past 3 days. And if you want to, please pop it into the chat box and share it because now is the time for kapow, friends. Now is the time. And I'm done. Is anybody else there? Like
Oh
I'm just like
yeah,
talking to my screen.
it feels that
uh,
way, doesn't it? There's a couple of hundred
oh
folks
man.
still sticking around. That's wonderful.
Okay.
There's a there are things popping into the chat. There's a couple of questions. I almost want to let the chat cool down. It's a little bit red hot. Even more
Yeah.
interesting, Twitter is all lit up as well.
Oh, okay. So I did, and I meant to say this at the beginning. As of June 1, am on a Twitter sabbatical. Mainly for my mental health. I've just, honestly, I have a
No, I
tremendous
understand.
workload. I've got all these deadlines this summer, and I only have one speed on Twitter, and it's like 100 miles an hour, and I can't trust myself. So, yeah. So I had to take a break. So I love that folks are sharing, and I will acknowledge everything when I'm back on July 1.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
All right, now I can open.
No-
People are sharing what they're going to do. Yay! I can totally. Am I going to be able to download this? Because I
Oh
really
yeah.
want to know. Oh, awesome. Okay. I love it. I love it. And because I tried to catch as many of the sessions as I could, but I didn't get to catch all of them. And I know I missed some really good stuff. So I'm going to go back and watch the videos. Absolutely.
So your message is incredibly hopeful.
Of course.
And I have suppressed the cynic in myself. Not that I'm much of a cynic.
Mhm.
I'm in the same boat as you. Um, but but uh, but 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 I've been doing this a long time, Kat,
Yep.
and
Yep.
I'm most bolstered. My old boss was Ron Stout, who's awesome. And one time we were trying to get something past the faculty at Chicago Kent, and we thought we had all bases covered, and we presented it and had our act together and the technology, and they voted it down, and so we had to stop. And we came out of the meeting, and he said to me, I said, well, what do we do now? And I was only been there a few years. He says, well, we never retreat. We just charge in a different direction. And so, we went off and did a different project. And
Mhm.
one of those projects of his was to bring a Cali outpost to Chicago, Kent.
Mhm.
And then about the time that he was leaving to become the vice president of Lexus, I was done with what I was doing with Chicago Kent. We had built a brand new building, and so I applied for the executive director job and said, I think you need someone like me to help run Cali, and it's worked out. And 30 conferences later, and 32
It's
years later,
amazing.
I'm like, this has been a fantastic career.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping, sure, we're not going to succeed all at once. We're not going to win all
Mhm.
of our battles, but the stoic in me says the fight is good as well
Yeah.
as the victory. Um,
Yeah, well, man, kudos to you, honestly. Big fist bump, because you have had like the patience to stick with this for so long is because I wake up daily, like I have a little mantra I say to myself every morning, like basically, goddess, give me the strength
oh
to
yeah.
put up with what I'm going to have to face today, just to keep, pushing my message out there.
So here's
Yeah.
a question for you.
Yeah.
So how do we assist law faculty to shift their thinking to
Hmm.
allow distance learning professionals to
Hmm.
facilitate their successful movement to online learning?
All right. I'm going to say first that there are going to be people you're not going to be able to shift. There just are. And so what I've learned, I've been a licensed attorney for 22 years. I've spent more than the past decade trying to help move lawyers into the fourth industrial revolution. I now help law students mainly because they have fresh minds that have not yet assimilated to our cloudy fishbowl water. And one thing I know is you're just not going to move some people. And so part of it is understanding where you have a chance to get movement. There are really good change management resources. And I would be happy to connect with anybody one-on-one. My email address, it's c.moon@vanderbilt.edu, but I'll be happy to connect with anybody one-on-one and kind of assess their situation and make some recommendations to them. I mean, there are tools you use. That book Focus that I referenced, highly recommend, because it talks about, really, there are two different personalities in terms of what motivates us to change. And lawyers and law professors very clearly fall in one of those categories.
Mm-hmm.
And the book really helps you understand how you persuade people with those motivations to make change. And, you know, people are hard. Tech is easy. People are hard.
Oh yeah.
So there's no magic answer, but momentum is key. And I think every single one of us can do what we can with what we have where we are. And your greatest impact may be on your students and not your fellow faculty.
Yeah, and I would add, I actually tweeted this at a friend like a week ago. The two phrases we use are a coalition of the willing and politics of the possible, which is to say,
I like
you
that.
don't have to convince all the faculty. You
Nope.
don't even have to convince most of the faculty. You just have to convince one.
Mm-hmm.
And then after you convince one, or you have a project with one, maybe you convince
Mm-hmm.
maybe you have a project with another one, and then maybe you have another project with another one. If you're trying to move a group, you're going to fail. If you try to move an individual, you can find purchase and build on that.
You can, and I think that honestly, that might be structurally the only option for most people, unless you have real authority. And really, what is that when you have a law faculty that gets to decide how things go anyway? Like, even the dean doesn't really have real authority to make change happen.
Oh yeah.
My observation.
They have a bully pulpit though.
They do. And what they do and what they say and how they do it is critically important, and it can move people. But I will say this, we have clear structural impediments to widespread meaningful change. And so the redesign that's necessary, like really cleaning up our fishbowl water, is going to require some structural change. Of this, I'm convinced at this point, now being 4 years inside of legal academia and knowing more than I wanted to know about how all of this works. What's another question? Yeah.
Well, so I'll bet I know the answer, but it's worth asking because I've been asking it all day, all 3 days. So let's say a young adult comes to you and says, "I'm thinking of going to law school next year." Yeah. I mean, should they sit it out? Should they or should they jump in? You know,
Yeah. So I have a daughter. I have a senior in high school who is going to be starting college next year.
Oh,
it's a little different, but it's a similar calculus. You know, I think next year is going to be a little dicey because I think not enough of us across the curriculum are going to be managing online or blended learning as well as we can and should. We're still, very much learning. I think there's tremendous possibility there. And if you talk to the students who are enrolled at Mitchell Hamline, I think that all the ones I've talked to are incredibly pleased with the legal education they're getting and all the other aspects of that. I heard some of the student panelists respond to that question. You know, just as with my about to be freshman daughter, you know, I have grave concerns about how our students do socialize and do all these things that we recognize are critically important for that kind of lawyer formation experience in law school. But guess what, folks? I think we on the legal education side, we've got to get creative. We've got to think about doing things in ways that we've never done them before. And if we recognize that there are these pieces of the law school experience that are critical, then we've got to think about how do we recreate them or how do we replace them with something that's equally meaningful? And so that burden is on us. I've been talking to admitted students at Vanderbilt, and they really want to come. Like, these students want to get started. I will tell you, some students just want that JD. They want that piece of paper. They don't really care about all this other stuff that goes on. So I think it depends on a person's situation in so many ways. I think a critical kind of foundational issue that's very relevant to this question is legal education is too expensive. It's prohibitively expensive. It is, and I fear it's like designed to keep out the people we most need in our profession. And so I'm hoping in this whole conversation about how we deliver legal education differently if we're doing it online and blended, we really seriously address this cost issue. I think that may be the one point at which I would suggest to an admitted student to really reflect, what kind of support are you getting? What kind of debt are you going to have to take on? And I heard one student recommend, like, if you're thinking about coming to law school, but you've got a really good job right now and things are going okay, you might just want to wait. I don't know that that's bad advice. Like, I'm really, really conflicted. I also want my building, whether it's bricks and mortar or virtual, to be filled with students next year. So I want students to come. They're the best part of my world as a teacher. But damn, it's hard. It's really hard, John.
Okay, if you're going to get dark, then let me go there with you. To paraphrase a previous keynote speaker, not this year, but a couple of years ago. Oh man, I can't remember his name, but what you're saying is legal education is on fire, the courts are on fire, the world's on fire, the fire trucks are on fire. How can we address all these problems simultaneously? You know, how do we maintain our sanity and our aplomb and our fairness and our empathy? You know, I've got I got to deal with my family and my kids and my life. I almost wanted to ask the technoids how many of them are in fear of their jobs.
Yeah.
You know, because if law schools experience a 10 or 20% drop in admissions or applications, although I've seen some good news on that it's doesn't look bad yet. You know, schools are going to cut through the muscle of staff and even cut to the bone of faculty at some point.
John, I have the word innovation in my title. Could I be wearing a bigger target? Right? Sorry. So how do we stay resilient and optimistic with, because, you know, really, if we ask the 5 whys about why we have these challenges again, everything is so deeply rooted in a broken structure, in multiple broken structures. So how can any one of us, like, what difference can we make? So again, all I can tell you is what I do. I wake up every morning and I focus on what I can do, where I am with what I have, and what can I do personally to keep moving forward? Who can I influence and affirm and promote who is going to do the same? I believe that one person can reach others and create momentum, and that's when you find your allies. And at some point, the dam breaks. And again, the crisis we needed, the COVID crisis, has forced a bunch of people who never thought they would even use Zoom, not only to use Zoom, but probably to do some things damn well. Like people have surprised me. They've also gravely disappointed me in this, but a lot of people have surprised me. And so we have this, like, their mindsets are shifting. And so I think they're creating little cracks of opportunity, right? And so that's when, how do you identify those cracks and go insinuate yourself somewhere and find that one person who is willing to try another thing that you show them, and that's going to go well. And also, like, where is our competitive nature? Like, I believe my students are this way. Like, they see somebody doing something and, oh, that looks good, and it's getting them something. They're going to go try to do it. Well, let's, I don't know, maybe we gamify this. I don't know what you gamify to motivate faculty, but And again, keeping in mind, because, you know, there are questions I see in the Q&A about, you know, what do you do about the fish who like their cloudy fishbowl and things like that? I mean, there are going to be some people that you just can't move. And I think you don't waste your time and energy. But every single person in this virtual room right now, there are things you can do individually to move this forward. And so I just say you focus on what you can do. And that might just be in your classroom. And guess what? You are teaching 24 students or 30 students or 12 students who are going to go out into the world, and they're going to take all that you gave them and taught them, and they're going to go make a difference. And that is why I do what I do. And I think that probably explains it for most of the other people listening who might, like me, have big targets on their back right now.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I think that's.
Is everybody ready to go get their beverage now? Well, isn't it happy hour and raffle? We're going to move into like the Zoom meeting, and I get to see everybody and chat, and I'm going to go outside. Yeah, because my dogs can bark when it's not my responsibility to be keeping everyone's attention. Yeah, and you know, and I think the other questions that are in the Q&A, you know, I'll talk about specifically. I'll just really quickly the question referencing the law professors who teach the part of the Delta at which they excel. Blah 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 blah. You know, we exist in a culture in higher education that not only promotes but rewards that. And so I think it's no different than when we try to understand how we shift the dynamic in the legal profession. It's going to require structural and cultural change. And that can and does happen. I mean, the rest of the world has moved from the second industrial revolution into the fourth industrial revolution. Like, it's happening in the world around us. Again, I don't have any magic answers, but the beauty of the opportunity is that for those of us who care and are willing to embrace the challenge, this is an incredible opportunity to become really, really wildly creative. And I say go for it. Go forward.
Don't waste this crisis.
Don't waste a good crisis. Never waste a good crisis. Kapow.
Kapow.
Kapow. All right. Is it, yeah.
Cat.
Pow.
Pow.
Right at you, man.
Thank you so much.
Fun. All right. Good to see you too, Elmer.
Well, I'm trying to get the next session going.
I know.
I've got people lining up over
here. And I just see Deb's name, so it's awesome. Well, I'll see you guys over there. Hi. Right.
All right.
You're gonna finish your candy bar in Zoom. All right. Bye.
See you all over in the raffle, folks.